Matty Durant has suffered from anxiety. And we start this conversation talking about clickbait, and then we go into his story about suffering from anxiety. And I talk a little bit about my story as well. It's truly fascinating to me that the more people that I talk to in this hobby, the more vocal I get about mental health, the more people are starting to respond and say, I deal with that, or I deal with something similar, or I've had this happen to me. Whether it be from depression to anxiety to bipolar, I think the only thing I haven't really heard about so far is schizophrenia. I don't know. It is truly interesting to me that we've broached the subject and now we're starting to talk about it. And I think that's good. If you would like to support what I do here, then check out the link below for my Patreon. My patrons get an audio, a podcast version of all of the episodes that I do. They drop all at once. You don't have to sit through waiting for it to peter out day by day. So if that's something you'd like, or if you'd just like to support what I do, check out my Patreon. I greatly appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Fine. And I mean, look, dude, people haven't heard from you in a year or more. People just be excited to hear what you're thinking, what you're doing. It'll be.
I've never thought of myself as that person though, that where people are waiting for me to release an edit and for me to speak or something like that. I've never been. I don't feel like I'm like that guy, you know.
Well,
so.
And it's and this will be off. We won't talk about this unless you want to. But neither did I. I never thought when I started doing these interviews that I would have a voice in FPV, and now all of a sudden, I've only got 6,000 subs, which isn't huge. But I'm pulling a consistent anywhere from, 1,000 to 5,000 on average views. And then
you just have to keep on going, man.
Yeah.
You got to just always be doing
it. Well, the funny thing, the thing that started kind of freaking me out a little bit was I'd go talk to people. I'd go into a group chat or the Rotorite group, and I'd say something, just not even thinking about it. And everybody would be like, hey, Michael, when are you going to talk to so-and-so? And I was, who are you? Right? Or people would kind of start getting in my face about things and telling me that I was like a clickbaiter or just, haters and whatnot. And I'm like, well, why are you coming after me? And so, you definitely have a voice. You defined a style. And I think people will be very excited to hear that. There's more to come, right?
Let's talk about clickbaiting, by the way.
Yeah.
I said something whereas it was 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, when I said, if I see another building dive or another power loop, I'm going to puke. Do you remember that post?
I don't remember that. No.
Okay. It's back in my Facebook, and
right.
Then all the top pilots came on and started chastising me and everything. If I see another thumbnail with a clickbait title on something, I am literally going to puke. It is like they're not even trying anymore. The guys that are in the FPV community that are doing monthly, weekly, or just posting all the time, are just trying to get people to click on their videos, and they'll do whatever it takes with that thumbnail and with that title is what I'm seeing lately. So I would like to see it cool down a little bit and just I know some people do it as a profession and a source of income, but then make your content a little bit better so you don't have to use a thumbnail clickbait, right?
Yeah, there's a so in full disclosure, I get accused of clickbait all the time. And my definition of it is if you, let's say that I have an interview, for instance, And during that interview, I spend 30 seconds talking about topic X with the interviewee. And then I make the title and the thumbnail revolve around topic X, which we spent 30 seconds on. That's clickbait. Like 100%. Like, it's not the idea is that the title and the thumbnail and everything else is going to pay out to the thing that you're titling and thumbnailing for. And if it doesn't, then that's how I see clickbait. I have had titles. Now, I can be very, very aggressive on titles. And I don't know if you saw the Chad Nowak interview that I did a few weeks ago. So Chad Nowak and we had this really...
Is he still flying?
No, he's not. Well, he's not flying freestyle. He is flying. He is teaching folks how to fly professionally in terms of like
nice
area surveys and things like that.
Yeah, I know that's where the money is at. If you can't become a professional YouTuber or racer, that's where the money's at in FPVing or droning. And good for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally teaching people how to fly flame wheels. And
what's that?
If you see
that thing back there.
That thing, okay, that's the flame wheel. It's 450 millimeters, and he's teaching these guys how to, he goes out and teaches miners and surveyors and stuff like that how to fly these in Australia, and he's doing well for himself. But we had he had a pretty bad run of it for a while. He was in a pretty bad place. The Rotor Riot thing didn't end well for him. Mentally, emotionally, he was just in a really bad place. Some stuff happened relationally. And so, and I knew that had happened with him, and he and I had kind of talked about it off and on, off camera. And I finally messaged him and said, hey, you want to come on and do an episode about mental health? And he was like, let's do it. And during the interview, he straight out said, I asked him, I was like, have you ever, where's suicide fall into this for you? And he told me, like, there's stages of suicide, right? There's like ideation where you think about it. And then there's, you're going out and planning. And then there's the actual commission of the act, right? And he was going out and securing the things he needed to kill himself. It was one of those moments where I was just like, I looked at him, I was like, you not only had a plan, you were acting on it. Like, how did you not end up killing yourself? And one of his friends realized something was off and said, you come hang out with me. And slowly, after a while, it kind of, it calmed down for him. And it sort of went away. He pulled out of the depression. And life is in a better place for him. So we had this amazing, and I opened up with him about my own mental health struggles. I'm bipolar. It's just, I always have been. It's who I am. There's definitely struggles that go with that.
I was 3 years ago. I couldn't leave the house. I was on the verge of killing myself too, and I was in a horrible place. Like, I had like panic attacks. I couldn't even leave. I had to get my dad to bring me groceries. And that's what's so crazy about everything that's happened is like total 180. Like, I started taking meds though, because I was too far gone. So I needed to take meds. I needed to do therapy, and then slowly start going into like introducing little things that would induce stress, try to calm myself down. But I'm in a really good spot now too. Either way, did Chad did he tell you if he was starting to take meds, or did he just snap out of it? I don't remember specifically if we talked about meds. He may have, I'm not sure. He then ran into a problem with his physical health where he's got a genetic mutation that makes him way more susceptible to autoimmune diseases.
And so he's been, over the past year, he's also been dealing with a lot of physical ailments as well. But when, going back to so I want to touch on the mental health thing, but going back to the clickbait, I titled the first, it was the first part, the first thing we talked about. It was the first episode to come out. I released it on a Sunday. I titled it Chad Nowak: Suicide. And the internet lost its shit because so many people that knew him read 3 words: Chad Nowak suicide. And
he committed suicide.
And they thought he had committed suicide, and that I was like reporting on it. And it was absolutely not my intention to indicate that he had committed suicide. And actually, I wanted people to see that and kind of realize that they were going into a very weighty topic, right? Like, this is not, oh, hey, we're going to talk about a little bit of flying. No, we're talking about like this deep, deep stuff. And yeah, that definitely blew up in my face. Bardwell, I think, rightfully called me out on it. I think it took me 15 minutes to change the thumbnail and the title. But I received a lot of poor words from people.
But you changed it.
I did change it, yeah. And I changed it to Chad Nowak: mental health.
Yeah. So I mean, but you did the right thing.
Right.
People make mistakes, man.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. People make mistakes, and how I define someone who's made a mistake is how they deal with it afterwards. So as long as did you like apologize publicly?
Absolutely, I do. I went to everybody that commented on the post on YouTube and apologized to every person that said, I thought he killed himself, or that you need to change this or whatever. Bardwell had a thread that was going. I apologize to those people. I contacted a few other folks and said, I'm so sorry that if this is what you thought. So, I mean, I owned it. Like, it was a mistake, like 100%. It was a mistake. It was just poor judgment. I never even thought about the fact that I would put out a title that made people think Chad had killed himself. But on the other hand, at this point in YouTube's progression, trying to grab people's attention is so difficult. And
yeah, it is. I mean, I can't. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard nowadays. You said that you had how many subscribers? 5,000, 6,000?
6,000, yeah.
It takes a lot to get to that next thing, and then you have to to the next level, and then you have to have a little bit of luck too.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
like you look at people like Rotor Riot, Steel, and who else has a big following? Like Johnny FPV.
Mm-hmm.
They did put in a lot of work, but there was a lot of other pilots that put in a lot of work too that had really good content. So how did they not go forward? You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of luck in it, and playing the algorithms and getting in at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I'm not doing this as like a money maker, right? Like, it makes a little bit of money for me. And so, but I'm not dependent on this for my, to support my family.
You're doing it because you're into the hobby and you want to have a voice and you think it's important.
I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you, right? Like, that's awesome to me. But the folks that are in it for, like, when you're fully committed, this is going to be what you do. You're making your money off of YouTube and whatever income streams you can figure out. It becomes a totally different game at that point.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, if it was me, I would never do it.
Yeah.
I would never bet my livelihood on this hobby. And I still to this day, people criticize me for being like, all you're looking for is money in the hobby.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, Bodie doesn't eat drone parts. Drone parts don't pay for the private school that we're sending him. That's like 40
Right.
grand a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't pay my bills. It doesn't pay my rent. So of course,
Yeah.
like Chad, I had a funny talk with Chad because me and Chad never used to be buddies. Steele and I still aren't buddies. But I think that me and Chad, I don't know like how our feeling is now. I haven't talked to him for a long time, but I felt like there was a little period of time there where we were talking to each other, and I was like trying to help him with the whole mental health thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even recall giving him advice to maybe go see someone and get some meds and stuff like that, because I know more than most people that we're a very chemical being, and you don't, if your brain's not producing the right chemicals, you might need a little bit of help. So anyways, where was I going with this? Just what was I doing? What was I talking about?
We were talking about clickbait and mental health, which are interestingly entwined, actually. Chad Nowak, talking to him about maybe getting some meds, because you had asked me if he had been on meds.
Yeah, I was going somewhere else with it. I was talking about how it doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
My God, what just happened? This is what happens when you don't get the sleep. If you ever want to know what it is, what happens when you don't get sleep, watch people who experiment with it, and then that's what happens. And literally, thoughts will just leave your brain like this. Because I've literally been running off of like 5 to 6 hours of sleep and less sometimes for the last 6 months.
Well, let me turn us back. Let me turn us back on to the topic then. For me, like my life has been lived on meds for most of my adult life, and it will be for the rest of my life. And I have also, the bipolar comes with a lot of other things. I've dealt with panic attacks, and I've dealt with the anxiety that leaves you curled up on the couch for a month. And it is unbelievable how crippling that is. And you're right. Like at some point,
it left me on the couch for a year and a half.
Did it really?
Yeah, dude. It was that fucked up.
What ended up pulling you out of it? I mean, what was the?
So I a lot of it's my fault though. So it was the thing where I was going to change the first time from the career that I was doing now, and go in full time in the commercial drone market in BC. I wasn't going to become like a professional YouTuber or anything like that. I was definitely going to have more time to fly, and I could do that.
Yeah.
And maybe it could get me some gigs in the future with other industries and everything. Anyways, it was just, I had this, I was going to go fly. I went to go flying. I had a coffee. I was driving over this bridge, and I had this crazy panic attack. And it was one of those ones where you're dizzy, you can't breathe, everything's sweaty. My arm's starting to go numb. I'm seeing dots in my vision because I'm hyperventilating, and at the same time taking such short breaths and tightening up. And I was like, what the fuck was that? Because I'd never experienced one before, like to that magnitude. I've experienced anxiety, but never a panic attack. And so that happened. Then it happened. I go home, and then it happened again on this other bridge, and then it happened again just driving in traffic, and then it happened again. I'm not even working. I'm not doing anything. I'm just like I'm living off of savings and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where my bubble starts doing this, and I'm like, what is going on? And then because my bubble's doing this, I can't go out and fly, and I can't go out and make money. And because my bubble's doing this, I'm thinking, oh my God, what's happening? Is this
Yeah.
is this the enemy? Well, my house is where I stay for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And
And
then that's when the depression starts
it's a
sitting in.
feedback cycle where it just starts feeding itself.
Yeah, and then the depression starts coming in
Yeah.
because I've always been that guy that goes out and does it. You know what I mean? If I have something on my mind, I go and do it. And then so it gets to the really bad part where there's really dark days, like tremendously dark days, figuring out how it's gonna get done, all that stupid bullshit, never thinking you could ever think about killing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I snapped out of it and started to try to do it naturally, exercising, eating right,
Yeah.
taking 5-HTP, taking some other stuff to get your dopamine levels up and all that stuff, and naturally get your serotonin levels up. And then that took like to me up to the year mark. And then from there, it just wasn't working. And I went for like maybe another 3 months. And then I started taking Cipralex, which is an RSSI. And, and with me, I don't do drugs. Like I don't drink. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke weed. I don't smoke cigarettes. During that whole year and a half, I didn't drink coffee because the coffee would just get me too like wired, and like any outside substance really affect me easily. So when I started taking the antidepressant, I would start at like 2.5, and I would do that for like a month. And then, so that's why it took so long for me to get out of it, because it was like, I took that for a month. It takes a month for this stuff to start working. And it takes like 2 months to really, really start to have a stride. But I went from 2.5 for a month, 5 for a month, 7.5 for a month. And then I went to 10 for a month.
Yeah.
And then from there, I needed another 2 months for it to actually start kicking at that much. And then I started introducing myself back into like, dating and getting out there and just being in relationships again and working. And then, that's kind of how I snapped out of it. But honestly, it's like last year was a really good year financially and just with the family and everything. And I've seen, just from taking the meds, I've seen such a big change. And my wife wants me to get off of it because she's totally that natural path person. But I'm like, at this point, it's like, I need sleep and I need food. If I don't get those two things, basic things, I turn into a psychopath. So food will turn me into like an actual psychopath. Sleep will turn me into anxiety and panic attacks and stuff like that. So I'm afraid, because I'm just on that fine line of getting enough sleep. I can feel anxious in some uncomfortable spots, but I think I still need the meds for now. I'd like to start slowing it down, but what happens if I just have that brain that just where I need to have that chemical balance just help just the littlest bit? Because 10 milligrams of Cipralex is not a lot. No. And I could probably bring it down to 5 and I'd probably still feel the same. That's that with the whole mental health thing. At the same time too, now there's a lot more of doing like mindfulness meditation and
Dude,
and just
I had so through all the stuff that I've been going through for the past year or so, I ended up, so I was well on my way to becoming a full-blown alcoholic. Yeah, it was getting bad. It was very quiet. No one knew. I would wait until everybody went to bed. I'd come out here. I'd start drinking. I'd typically have just a few, and then I'd go in and go to sleep, right? And, at first it was, a fifth of whiskey would last me a week. And then
were you taking meds at that time?
Oh, yeah. Which is,
So you were self-medicating on top of medication?
I was self-medicating on top of the meds. And the meds that I was taking are huge, like in terms of brain chemistry. So, it would go from...
And they probably don't work as well with the alcohol either too, right?
yeah, I mean, I would go, and I was really open with my psychiatrist about it. It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. She'd be like, that's not a good idea, but I still did it.
Mm.
Got to the point where I was clearing a fifth of whiskey every 2 nights. And, at that point I was like, this is not good. I need to do something about it. My wife finally caught wind of it. It became very apparent. Long story short, quit drinking back in like March. But where was I going with this? Maybe I don't. Sleep.
Good for you, by the way.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
for
you.
you.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, I had a point, and now apparently I'm tired too. No, but what I will say is that, with, I would definitely like, take it slow in terms of, whether or not you're going to, come off of whatever, this was it Cipralax.
Oh, totally. Yeah, Cipralex. I trust me, and I'm on it. I'm not gonna because the other thing is too, once like it's working for you now, if you do come off of it,
it may not work
might
again.
not work as good
I had that happen
again.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, then you're finding these other drugs, and these drugs are dirty sometimes. Like,
yeah, they are.
Like if for Cipralex, I forgot to take it one day, and it wasn't that bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I took it the other day, the other time, and I just noticed I was a little bit tired. But there's like stuff like Effexor that I was on, like when I was like 21 and stuff.
Yeah.
And like it would give me like brain zaps and like the horrible upset stomach and like the shits. And if you didn't take it like an hour on time, you know what I mean? Like it was really, really bad. So Cipralex is a very clean one. There's still a sex drive. There's still like, maybe the only thing I can think of is it makes me eat a little bit more, but I've always been kind of a clean eater, so it doesn't really affect me. And if I exercise, it's fine. But that's the thing that scares me, is if I go off of it and then all of a sudden I'm like, I kind of need it, and I go back on it, and then I have to find another one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And in speaking to your talk about, good sleeping, good physical activity, the benefits of that are huge. The benefits of that are huge. Oh, I know where I was going. So fast forward, after I quit drinking, fast forward a little while, I ended up going to see this guy, and he specializes in addictions. And he told me, this like second meeting, right? He goes, all right, I want you to download this app, and I want you to try meditating. And I was like,
is it Headspace?
It was, it was Headspace. And and I was just like, and I didn't say this to his face, but I was like, you're out of your freaking mind. Like, if you think that I'm going to go home and sit down on my bed and like meditate, and this is going to somehow help me, like, dude, why am I even paying you? And so I was real stubborn about it. And then like 2 or 3 days in, I was like, it won't kill you to try it, right? And I went and, I found a quiet place, which is hard to do when you've got like teenagers in the house. And I sat on the bed and I meditated for 10 minutes. And I remember opening my eyes and I was like, what just happened? It's just like, why am I so peaceful? Yeah.
Not only do you get that feeling initially, but where it really starts to kick in is practicing it to the point where you can start shutting off a panic attack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you're totally changing the rhythm that your brain waves are going in, and you can start shutting that off. And that's where I had to get to. I had to figure out, the thing I really struggled with was exercise, because exercise is almost everything of a panic attack. Your pressure goes, breathing, you're sweating, and it will trigger a panic attack. I have no idea. Yeah. And yeah. So it's, for me at least, I know it's like that for some other people, but so I had to learn how to get into that zone of what meditation does, which is shutting off your brain or just like focusing your thoughts somewhere else. And that's definitely, I like even now, so because I get really bad anxiety when I go over bridges for some reason. I don't know what the fuck it is, man. I don't know. I remember, and like this is the thing. I had to think about like why I had panic attacks. Why did these little stupid things make me so incredibly like obnoxiously and just so afraid of it, like irrational fear. And I remember I used to have dreams of going across this one bridge that we have from North Van to Vancouver called the Lionsgate Bridge. And I had dreams that like it would fall apart and I couldn't get across it fast enough.
Yeah.
And like when I was a kid, and I'm like, could it be that? And then, yeah, like, I don't know. Either way, the bridges have always made me weird. So I have a Tesla, so I could put on the autopilot, and the autopilot is really good because I think autopilot is great because it definitely allows you to focus your things on the bigger picture. Like I don't just put it on and like start playing games on my phone and stuff. Like I still and like if Bodhi's in the car, it doesn't go on. Like I'm always like full on, right? So, but I'll put it on, and it just allows me that, like when I go over bridges, it allows me that little bit of just like breathe and like calm yourself down, and you're not focusing on the driving. You can just, I can kind of just like zone out and just let myself breathe and focus on what's going on, but not have to like use any body parts to drive the car. And it's the meditating really does help. It's hard to learn though, because I'm an ADD type, so I'm very hyper focused on something that I really want to do. But if I'm not wanting to do that thing, I'm bouncing around like crazy, right? And with meditation, you're usually not wanting to do it because it's one of those things where it's like it's a maintenance thing you have to do for your mind, and a workout that you have to do for your mind, but it's very boring. But once you figure out that what it does, it's great.
Yeah. So,
we haven't been talking much about FPV, and I'm sorry.
I think that's fine, but I'll tell you what, I'll push us back that direction.
I cannot stress how important mental health is. When I look at myself over the past 4 months or so, and I look at myself now over the last month, I'm a totally different person. The reason being is that the medications are working. I don't relate to the person that I was in October and November and December and part of January. That person seems different than I am. I'm glad that I'm not that person. Matty similarly dealt with crushing anxiety. He didn't leave the house for 1.5 years. Just watch the intensity of this guy on camera. And I want to ask you, would you ever believe that he would not want to leave the house? Mental illness, mental health problems can affect anyone. Some of us are predisposed to them and born with them, like me. Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you get depressed. Some of us are predisposed to anxiety. There's all kinds of stuff. It's important that we keep talking about this, because the more that we talk about it, the more that everyone is going to realize that, hey, this is not my private suffering. There are other people out there that are dealing with this too. And once we bring enough exposure to it, whether it be in the FPV community or anywhere else, it quickly becomes not a silent killer.